Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is someone that I think you're going to really enjoy. I certainly do. Her name is Liz Kislik, and she's a management consultant and executive coach. She's a frequent contributor to Harvard Business Review and Forbes, and she has a popular TEDx talk called Why There Is So Much Conflict at Work and What You Can Do to Fix It. So I'm thrilled to have you, Liz. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, John. I'm happy to be with you.
Now, I'll just say up front, I did not work with you on your TEDx talk. I'd be happy to claim that I did. I think it's very fun. I love your message, but I didn't, just to get that out of the way. And, but I do think that, it seems to me like there has been a lot of conflict, period. Like not just at work, right? But there's just been a lot of conflict everywhere. And I wonder if maybe we could just start with that. Like, because I think there is a lot of conflict at work right now. I think there's a lot of conflict everywhere. And I think that's something that you have thought long and hard about. So what do you have to say about that, Liz?
It's a tough time, John. People are stressed. They're anxious. I think just the world situation alone, it's like a low-grade fever. When you have low-grade illness or pain all the time, you just have less capacity to deal with the regular struggles and stresses that are in everyday life, no matter what you do. And there are more of those because how are the COVID rates where you happen to be?
Right.
Where I am, the positivity rates are actually quite high. They're about 8%.
Yeah.
So do you mask again? Well, for me, yes. For some people, no.
Yeah.
Do you worry about it more? Do you not go to things you had started going to?
Yeah.
That's one small example. There are so many examples of the kinds of things that are just hard to live with. And it makes us all a little more sensitive, a little more raw. So when something seems to go wrong, we might react faster or without dropping back to see what the full situation really is.
Yeah. Well, so we're all in that state, right? What is something that you would suggest, especially to leaders at maybe entrepreneurs who are, have a startup company, they're raising money, they're under a lot of pressure, or leaders at big organizations like Johnson & Johnson or Boston Scientific, who've got these massive pressures of this already running business. But I mean, in some ways, gosh, it's almost more pressure, So what would you say to a leader, particularly of an organization or a company, about this conflict at work and what they can do?
Separate from all the stuff I said in the TEDx, the first thing I would say is all those leaders you referred to, they're humans too.
Yeah.
And it's actually easy for people to lose sight of that and just see them in their roles.
Yeah.
So the first thing for anybody, and particularly for leaders, is to give themselves a little room. I have to do this for myself. I recommend it to you, to just pause and say, okay, I feel anxious now or stressed or worried or burnt or, steamrolled or whatever the thing is. I do feel that way. Okay, that's allowable. I feel that way. I need to give myself room for that and recognize it so that I can then behave appropriately to all the folks I'm supposed to be leading.
Yeah.
So the first thing is really self-awareness and self-regulation.
Yeah.
And then it's creating extra room for everybody else because they are fully as freaked out as you are, although it's about different things.
Yeah.
So just a little more room, a little more grace, a little more compassion for ourselves and for everybody else because it's a rough time. And then we can start to look at what is the substance of the conflict? What is the level or significance of the conflict? Is it small and petty, or is it really a big deal? But diving into analyzing the conflict before calming ourselves and getting a grip, when we're reactive, it actually adds fuel to whatever else is going on.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about mirror neurons all the time in my training and coaching. So if you, as the leader, are reactive, everybody mirrors up and they are going to be exactly like you're being, right?
Right.
You know, and what you said, I think is so important. And it reminds me that months and months, like a year ago plus, I was reminding people that what we were going through with the COVID epidemic was unprecedented in our lifetimes, which is true. You know, like, I mean, there were very few people left over from the flu pandemic to remember that, right? So, and then, you know, we've got monkeypox kind of on a slow boil there, you know, that who knows what's going to happen with that. And then Russia invaded Ukraine, and it's the largest land war in Europe by far since World War II. So all these things individually are essentially unprecedented in our lifetimes. And it's, you know, so to give yourself a little room, like, it's not ridiculous, right? It's not like you're being a wimp if you give yourself a little room right now.
Yes, I would actually strengthen that and put an extra gloss on it. So not only are all of these things happening, but if you go back to COVID versus the flu pandemic, my perception is that once the flu pandemic was well understood, the U.S. at least operated with a fairly singular focus. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew what they were supposed to do, agreed it was their responsibility. The medical profession, the government, rank and file citizens, everybody was aligned around this stuff.
Right.
That's not true today.
Yeah.
So the idea that, okay, there are these bad things happening, but I know what to do, that clarity is missing.
Yeah.
And lack of clarity is hugely stressful and anxiety provoking.
Yeah.
And I would reframe to say that it is explicitly strength to not react, to pause, to gather yourself. It's the opposite of being a wimp.
Yes, I totally agree.
Right? It's actually weak people who overreact, and the overreaction itself, in a bizarre way, is almost like an admission that they can't handle it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it reminds me of one of the biggest breakthroughs I ever had in my life, which was maybe, 15 plus years ago. I realized at a certain point that I was willing to totally sell myself out just to have some certainty. You know, like if I sent a proposal out, they didn't get back to me within a couple of days, I'd be very tempted to send them a thing saying, I could give you a 15% discount, you know?
Right.
And it dawned on me how much I was hurting myself just to get that clarity. And I invented the possibility of being at ease with uncertainty. And I noticed that anybody, anywhere who had any real amount of power had just a massive amount of uncertainty, period, forever and always. And so I started strengthening my muscle of being at ease with uncertainty. And I'm still not anywhere near being totally at ease with all uncertainty. But that absolutely changed my life, and it doubled my income almost overnight, you know?
That's brilliant, John. First, the awareness that that's what you were doing, that you were willing to leave money on the table just to know you had it or you didn't have it. You'd
Yeah.
rather not have it than
Yes.
have to wait. And
Yeah.
that is so human because we feel unsafe under conditions of uncertainty.
Yes, for sure.
We don't know what's going to happen. So our instinctive preparation, and it's different for all of us, but whatever that is, we can't do it. That interregnum, most people take as painful. It's
Yeah.
like purgatory, as opposed to liminal space in which anything could be possible and maybe something even better than you thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, way better. Way better. Are you kidding?
Right.
I had no idea what was
Right.
available when I stopped selling myself out.
Right. And every day, people get emails that don't sound so good. Sound nasty. Somebody didn't respond well, didn't respond at all, responded in a way that felt like a put down. You could read all kinds of things into people's responses. The ability to pause, to wonder what they meant, and to find a courteous and helpful way to check. I just had this experience, I don't know, a week and a half ago. I was put in touch with another consultant, by another consultant, who felt that we could be helpful to each other. And, we're all under pressure.
Yeah.
So when the person I was supposed to meet did not respond to my choice of 2 times that I knew were within the framework, I sent her a Zoom invitation saying I took the liberty of choosing this time, blah, 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 blah. And she wrote back a very snippy thing about that she had no time to meet with me. And I thought, oh my goodness, did I do something terrible? Which is usually our first response.
Yeah,
did I
yes.
screw up? Right?
Yeah.
Why would she hate my guts so much? Like nothing's happened yet.
Yeah.
So I held myself back. I did not answer until I could write this really calm answer in which I referred to her prior email and said I was confused because she had said this, et cetera, et cetera. The poor woman was so apologetic. She's been getting all of those weird, nasty marketing things where people just say, oh, let me jump in your calendar.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yes.
And she just, misconnected, thought it was one of those, and was horrified at what she knew she sounded like.
Yeah.
And we laughed about how even turning something down, it's best to do it carefully because you don't know where the mistakes are and how the other person's going to react.
Yeah. That's so good. It reminds me of, because when I look at the title of your TEDx talk, why there's so much conflict at work and what you can do to fix it, the first thing that goes through my mind is, okay, that starts with me. What can I do internally for me? And one of the biggest things, Liz, that I took on several years ago that has made an enormous difference and made me more able to do that. Like I do my best to be mindful. I do some meditation. My meditation practice it's not super solid these days, but I've done a lot of meditation and mindfulness work. But the biggest thing I did is I promised myself that when I did things like that, I would apologize. Because something that I noticed is that whenever I act like a total freaking jerk, which I do, every time that I get a chance to analyze that, I'm pretty certain that I'm the more fortunate of the two of us, right? Whoever I've just acted like a jerk to, they probably don't love their work the way I do. They probably don't make as much money as I do. They probably don't like, I mean, like I'm just so blessed and I'm in such a great place, knock on wood. And when I act like a jerk, I should have been the bigger person. And so a couple of years ago when we were all flying a lot more, I think, and I was flying all the time. And even before COVID, it was stressful for me because I was just on planes a lot. And I acted like a total jerk to this woman in line, just a total jerk. And then I got on the plane and she just happened to be sitting behind me. And I was like, okay, well, you promised that you would apologize. So the minute we get up to 10,000 feet, you take off your seatbelt, you're going to do that, buddy. So we got to 10,000 feet. And I like to think I would have tried to find her, but the universe put her right behind me, right? So there's no question. And I stood up and I turned around and I just said, I want to apologize to you because the experience you had of me is not the experience I want anybody to have of me. And I deeply apologize. I'm very sorry. And as I started to talk, she, kind of leaned back in her seat and she thought I was going to come after her again. And the minute that she actually heard what I was saying and got that my apology was 100% genuine and I was totally owning it, not putting anything on her, she just leaned forward and grabbed my hand and said, "It's okay. I'm sorry too." And started gushing. Mm-hmm. And, it just reminded me again of like why it's just never worth it to be a jerk. It's just not. And when I am, and I force myself to apologize, the next time I'm in that situation, it does get me more present to maybe a better way to act,
So you've developed a wonderful practice for self-management.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
When you make a mess, you are dedicated to cleaning it up. And I would venture to add from your last comment to making fewer messes in the future.
Yes. Yeah. That's absolutely my commitment. I fail, but that's my commitment. Yes.
It's a practice.
Yeah. Yeah. We're practicing.
Right. That's all it is.
Why they call it a practice.
We will be human till we're dead.
Yeah.
So what I love about that is the idea that we all need to look at what we are contributing to a problem. Mm. I also want to say, though, that the focus of the TEDx is not actually that kind of self-work. Mm-hmm. It is necessary.
Yeah.
But what I was more focused on is that most significant conflict at work occurs because of structural problems. Mm. And then we have our personal behavior on top of that.
Yeah.
And the reason I put the responsibility at the feet of the individual is because if you don't do something about it, the great likelihood is that no one's doing anything about it.
Yes.
And you're unhappy anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well give it a shot,
Right.
How much more unhappy are you going to be? Maybe something will improve.
Yeah.
There's value, I think, when you have a log jam. Sometimes if you just wiggle a few logs, you don't even have to know the right log,
Yeah.
Sometimes just a little shift creates other shifts.
Yeah.
And so the ability to see what else is going on and not just your own experience in the conflict.
Yeah.
But what's happening for everyone gives you more data about what actions you might take, what experiments you might run.
Yeah. Yeah. Perspective and context really make a difference. Yeah.
For sure.
And at the very beginning, your story, I love that story. And one of the things that I also learned is, and listen, none of the stuff that I'm saying that I can't, I didn't come up with this self-regulation practice by myself, right? I have coaches. I'm a coach. I don't think that I deserve to sell coaching if I don't think it's valuable enough to get coaching myself, right? So it's all been through coaching and assistance and being in courses and all that. But one of the other big things that I realized around this whole thing of conflict is I had this bias to hear things that people told me for a really long time, like up until in my 40s. I had a bias to hear what people said to me for where's the insult in it. I was looking for the insult, and I didn't realize I was doing that. But when I finally realized I was doing that, so first of all, that was just a huge realization. I was like, holy crap, why am I doing that? Like,
Right.
I'm purposefully trying to hear if there's any way I could take this wrong, And then I realized that a lot of that stuff was me making stuff up anyway. I'm a human being. I make stuff up all the time. And then I act like that's true. I don't know. I don't know what they meant. I don't know where they were coming from. I just don't know. Right. So till I know, I decided I was going to start interpreting things in a way that empowered me versus disempowered me, since I don't know anyway. Right.
Yeah. I'm so struck, John, by your observation. You were looking to be insulted. What's insult?
Oh,
It's a kind of wound. The idea that you would be looking for how you are about to be hurt is such a testament, and some of it is the nature of living in society, the idea that we are deserving of wounding, that we are not good enough, okay, that it's all right, that even if we made a mistake, that we could be forgiven, that there are ways to recover. You're waiting for the blow.
Yeah.
That's a terrible thing.
And, and I think it's very human, right, Liz? Like, I mean, I'm very focused on language. Look at what I used to say that I think a lot of other people say. Oh, this is too good to be true. Like, why would I say that? Yeah. What are you talking about? Why would I ever say that? So when I realized I was saying that, I started saying this is just good enough to be true. And I took a course a long time, like 10 years ago, and for an entire year, one of the things that we focused on that made an enormous difference, I would never have my wife or my current job or any of that stuff without this. We spent an entire year giving up the conversation about deserving and not deserving, just letting it go. Right. Yeah. And I think it's very related to the religious concept of grace, just accepting grace. I don't deserve it, but I'll take it. So just give up the whole conversation of deserving and not deserving. And I told the universe, whatever you give me, I will cherish and I will take the best care of it that I can. And that's it, right? Do I deserve it? I don't. Not a conversation. Do I not deserve it? Not having that conversation. Right. But this idea that we deserve to be hurt, like where, like why, what?
Oh, so the framework is we all start out as little children, and big people who are responsible for us have to tell us no a lot.
Yeah.
We grow up for years starting pre-verbally, which really sticks in you, gets its hooks in you. We grow up knowing we are in the wrong, someone is unhappy with us, right? And our brains are geared to recognize threat. Because that's how you survived, in the desert, in the plains, and
Yeah. If you didn't, we wouldn't be here. Yeah.
Exactly. Rick Hansen talks about our brains being Velcro for the bad and Teflon for the good. Because if we were chased by a tiger, you've got to recognize the tiger. I think he talks about carrots. He talks about carrots and sticks. So if you don't have a carrot today, you could get a carrot tomorrow. But if the stick knocks you out today, there is no tomorrow. So
Yeah.
you'd better recognize the negative.
Yeah.
And that is how we survive. And so we do often assume it. In the
Yeah.
email situation I mentioned at the
Yeah.
beginning, my first question was, what did I do?
Yeah, totally.
It wasn't, oh, she's having a bad day. What did she do? It's what did
Right.
I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Because if you are a, good person in quotes,
Mm.
you're raised to feel guilty
Yeah.
at least some of the time.
Yeah.
And it's a bad framework.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a 6-year-old and I'm just thinking about, that whole thing. And how many times we say no to him, because if we didn't, he'd hurt himself, right?
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, I think I've thought about this a lot, Liz, that I think it's where original sin, the whole idea of original sin comes from, is that, like clearly we did something wrong here when we were little. And then we just kind of get stuck with that.
Yep. Yep. I like the Buddhist concept of impermanence.
Mm.
Whatever this is, no matter how bothersome it is, it's going to pass.
Yeah.
Something else is going to take its place. So you have a new opportunity to have a say in that,
Yeah.
to take action in that
Yeah.
over and over and over.
It's a fabulous framework. I mean, and important to remember, bad or good.
Right.
It's all
Right.
impermanent, right? So,
Right.
and you
Right.
always have a
So-
say in the next thing, and
That's right.
this too shall pass. So, don't miss it.
And it's just like your interaction with the woman in the seat behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I talk about this in terms of conflict all the time. You can always go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you've fired a subordinate you just couldn't tolerate anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You can always go back. You can always reopen, revisit, rethink, and acknowledge, I'm thinking about this differently today from
Yeah.
the way I thought about it 2 days ago when I snapped at you.
Yeah.
So not only am I sorry about it, which I am, I also want to talk about what you really meant.
Yeah. Oh, it's so, I mean, now that's mature, excellent leadership right there. Any clues about why that's so hard?
Yes. Because to say, I was wrong, we are raised to think that power is immutable. We are raised to think that power is complete, and that any indication of weakness, we've lost the entire game.
Right.
The culture has created a kind of zero-sum situation. So if I say this was wrong, maybe everything I say was wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll disrespect me. When in fact, you get so much farther on real human connection
Yes.
than you do on explicit use of power.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the truly most powerful, most impactful leaders are leaders who can admit they're wrong, who can say, I'm sorry, who, that's true leadership. The other type of leader is I think a poor, like imitation of leadership. And I have a term, Liz, that I call, I got my little TM on it, insightful vulnerability. And I think that's a really good leadership skill to have. And it is really hard.
Yes. I want to suggest that all of these strengths taken too far can create weakness, and that they all have some kind of compensatory strength.
Yeah.
So I think you said that being able to say I'm sorry is true leadership. And we would all, most of us, say that that's true. And I want to say something completely on the other side of that, which is that sometimes it is the ability to be decisive and make choices that are not good for everyone.
Sure. Yes.
That are true, that becomes true leadership because it's necessary at the time to keep the organization or the group or the tribe
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
And that bad leadership is people who are willing to be vulnerable and never be decisive.
Yeah.
Right?
You remind me of something that dawned on me a while ago, because I always thought, why is it so hard to just stay on the middle path, to just stay in balance? And I was picturing a scale with two things in each side that were weighed the same. That's pretty simple. It's pretty stable. It's not like that though. It's like a bicycle tire rolling down the middle of the road. It takes all constant ongoing energy and input to keep the tire rolling and in balance. And the minute that you let go of that energy input, it just falls to one side or the other. And it doesn't even matter what side. That's why both extremes of the political spectrum look so similar, because it doesn't matter what side it fell to. It's just that it's out of balance because we stopped putting the energy in.
Right. It's really both all the time.
Yeah, totally.
And swinging back and forth is no good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We all know organizations where people are whipsawed by the shifting from one kind of leadership to the other.
Yeah.
By the what I call the loose tight problem.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to empower everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, they made a mistake. Now we have to
take it all
pound
back
on their heads. Yeah. Ridiculous.
Oops. Yeah.
Right. Are the structures in place that keep people relatively safe and support them to take action in the appropriate direction? And do they feel rewarded for it? And is there a process for creating feedback that is not inherently painful? It's all of it at once. That's why it's so hard.
Yeah.
That's why we have jobs.
That's right. Yes, you're right. Yes. It's not easy. It's just inherently not easy.
Yeah.
And you remind me today, the day that we're talking is Ukrainian Independence Day, which is poignant, exceptionally poignant for me. And what you're saying reminds me of everything that I've been reading from all the analysts about the way that the Russian army operates versus the way that Ukraine has started to learn to operate since around 2012, 2014, when they started getting some NATO training and started modeling their military more on Western standards. And the big difference between those two comes down to what I think of as being focused on commander's intent versus being focused on just top-down follow orders, right? And Russia's top-down follow orders, it's like, go over there. I'll tell you why when you get there if I feel like it. Do exactly what I say. Zero initiative. Very, very painful. So painful to give feedback up the chain that it's just not even getting there, right? People just try to cover it up and hide it. And then, but in Ukraine, they've got a much more push the power out to the absolute fringe, empower each individual to know what the overall mission is, listen to the feedback, pivot quickly based on the feedback. And I don't think they're perfect, but gosh, they're so much better than what's going on with Russia. And I think that's, this is kind of what we're talking about. Do you have an organization like the Russian military where you're going to get freaking crushed? Or do you have an organization where you push out the knowledge and the understanding and the responsibility to the edges and then deal with it? Like if they make a mistake, to just take the power back isn't going to help. To go through the mistake. And by the way, I think organizations that fire people after their first mistake are organizations that waste a lot of money, because that person made that mistake. You think they're going to make that mistake again? No, but we're going to fire them and hire someone else who's going to make that mistake again now? Like, no, that's dumb. So anyway, that's what, just a shout out to Ukraine on Ukrainian Independence Day and the value of a commander's intent organization versus a top-down orders-based.
And part of why commander's intent works is because it has and conveys meaning.
Yes. Yeah.
There is a larger focus than the task.
Yeah.
There is a purpose. It has value. We are
Yes.
signed up for it.
Yeah.
We're signed up for the value,
Yes.
not the task.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's a
really
very
well
different,
said. Yeah.
very
Really well
different
said.
construct. Yeah, yeah. And I really think there are not as many organizations that fire on a single mistake today as there were 20
There
years
used to
ago.
be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I think it often goes the other way now, where mistakes, it's not that they are overlooked exactly, but they're not, people don't put things on the table in a way that is simultaneously kind and compelling enough with enough
Hmm.
support for the change in behavior. So sometimes mistakes get tolerated until they hit the point where they are intolerable.
Mm.
And then you have to exert too much force
Yeah.
to deal with them when they could have been handled at a much lower level of tension, distress,
Yeah.
um, that kind of thing.
You remind me of an article I read about couples that stay together, like long term. And the article said, you might think that the couples that stay together are the ones that let things slide, right? They're like, yeah, whatever, it's okay. No, not at all. The couples that stay together are the couples that the minute they don't like something, the minute something doesn't smell right or isn't going well, they talk about it. They bring it up and they deal with it, right? And those are the couples that last, not the couples, because the couples that let things slide, resentment builds up and frustration builds up. And then all of a sudden, one day the straw breaks the camel's back. But any of those things could have been dealt with in
Right.
the moment easily, but the buildup is what does it. And I think it sounds like a similar thing there in terms of tolerating mistakes versus just talking about them in the moment, getting it handled,
May I share an approach to that? Which is
Please.
a little
Yes, I
bit
would love that. Yeah.
different.
Yes.
So so I've already talked about pausing.
Yeah.
I don't like jumping on something the first time.
Okay.
I mean, you might say, "Oh, please don't, put that vase in this window. The light is better in that window." I'm not against correction, but I don't like the idea of making something a big deal
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
away. So what I recommend to my clients is when you see something, you might take care of the specific issue. When you see it a second time, then you make an explicit, concrete note to yourself. Could be mental, could be written, whatever. I'm noticing that there's something going on over here. And that's when you get curious about what is it and why is it happening. You may be able to address it right then. But if it happens a third time, that's a pattern. And then you're obligated to treat it.
I totally think that's great.
Okay, so
totally think
with
that's
the
great.
curiosity
Yes.
that you've had this open mind toward it, because what you're looking for is what's the process, which could be a thought process, it could be a structure that's external, that's driving this behavior that doesn't work for me or operations or other colleagues or whatever it is. So that when you address it, you can address it with curious questions.
That's
And
great.
language that I give clients is to open these things with, "I noticed." So it's not what are you
Yeah.
doing? What's going on over
Uh-huh.
there? Or why are you doing that? Which implies that stupid thing. But I noticed that when such and such happens, you do this other thing.
Yeah.
And I was wondering why that happens.
Yeah.
And actually create an interaction before you say the thing that will feel negative. Because when you do that thing, here are the negative consequences. Given what we've already said is our human reaction, "Oh my God, I screwed up. How can I ever come back? I'm guilty and ashamed.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm dramatizing, but
Yeah, but
that chain gets pulled.
yes.
So making it clear that it's interesting to me that such and such would be your response when thus and so happens. Tell me about that. If you actually convey curiosity, it's much easier for the other person to own up to what their thought process was. And that gives you such a much better ground for giving them the correction to what will actually work. Because if you understand really why they're doing it, it's much better than just saying, here's the right way, which goes back to what you described as the Russian model. Just do it.
Yeah. Have you heard of and or read the book Change Your Questions, Change Your Life?
No. Love
Because
that title.
You're channeling it right now. I have a group called Live Like a Leader, and we are reading that book. That's our current book that we're working with. And the woman who wrote that book talks about the judger mindset and the questioner mindset. And you just did a perfect example of that. And the power of questions, genuine curiosity and questions. That book is really highlighting it. And what you said now, I think, is just a perfect example of what's going to work. And again, it comes back to what we've been talking about. Everything's going on all the time. It just takes constant attention and mindfulness. And when you can bring that, right? If you as a leader can be in that place where somebody does something, you don't like it, you've noticed it 3 times in a row now, and instead of going over and saying, what is wrong with you? You say, I noticed and I'm curious. Just an unbelievable difference in how that is all going to play out.
Pro tip.
Yes.
So one of the things that I see happen with clients is you give them this kind of schematic for working through. And they may adapt to that, shift from their old way. The other added thing that really makes a difference, if you can relax your body before you go into the interaction, then you may actually sound and appear curious, which is what you want to be, as opposed to using curious language, but still sounding like your aggravated, fussy way, So it's really important to be consistent, language, tone, gesture, expression, all of that.
Yeah. So like 3 full deep breaths, like noticing that you might be ticked off right now, letting that go, taking 3 big deep breaths, and actually genuinely coming in, genuinely curious. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about the breath, exhale.
Okay, great.
Because 3 strong inhales can actually make you more hyper.
Okay.
It's crucial that your exhale be long and slow. That's how your body knows it's safe. There's a lot of science about the vagus nerve and why that works.
Yeah.
And I would just say, when you're in the jungle running from the tiger, your exhales are fast.
Yes,
They're just to get you to the next breath so you can run.
Yeah.
It's the exhale that lets you know. And then the other thing is, if you can, before you go into the conversation, literally expand yourself. Feel your shoulders drop. Let your arms hang. Release the physical tension. And if you have a hard time doing that, a great way to do it is actually to feel your feet in your shoes pressing against the floor, and to be conscious of where your toes are and where your heels are, and feel grounded, and then reestablish your body presence up from that, and then go.
That's great. That's great advice. Great pro tips here. So Liz, I noticed we're getting to the end of our time together. Is there anything I didn't ask? Oh, but one other thing I should ask, and I will definitely put this in the notes, but where can people find you best online?
Oh, thank you. So my website is the best place. That's
Uh-huh.
www.lizkislik.com. And for anybody who is on their exercise bicycle right now, it's LIZKISLIK.com.
Perfect.
And the TEDx is there. There's also a free ebook, if anybody wants, John, about the interpersonal aspects of conflict
Okay.
that
I
may
think
be
that,
helpful.
yeah, I recommend that. And so we'll send them to your website and let them, your TEDx
Pick
talk is
around.
prominent there. So we'll let them come through your
Yep.
website. But,
Yep.
I loved your TEDx talk. I thought it was very fun and really good. It's how we ended up here together. And, and I really appreciate you joining me. And now let me ask you that: is there anything else is there anything I didn't ask you, or anything else that you just would love to say before we wrap up?
I just want to come back to the way we opened. It is a hard time, and if people are feeling stressed and burnt, that's legitimate.
Yeah.
You may not be able to change your circumstances,
Yeah.
but be easy on yourself if you can, because that gives you more room to take care of whatever you need to take care of.
Yeah. Boy, amen. 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 Short point to that. I think a lot of the people listening know this already, but I almost died of an autoimmune disease after I lost my .com company back in the day. And I think it's because I was being so hard on myself. I mean, I think that I was genuinely on some level trying to off myself with my own immune system. And your advice of being gentle, that it's just so important. I mean, I don't know that everybody's quite aware enough of how much that even impacts things all the way into their health, like their actual well-being, not just how they feel that day or how they perform that day, but like long-term health implications. So I think that is a great, great final message. Will you say it one more
Thank you.
time?
Sure. The thing is to be easy with yourself, to recognize that it is a hard time. Once you've done that and acknowledged it, then you may have room to figure out something that would be better for you, to think if you could ask for some help yourself, and also to choose how to go forward with other people.
Yeah. Fabulous, Liz. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy to talk with you, and I think you've given us a bunch of valuable stuff to take away. So thank you very much.
I enjoyed it, John. Thank you.
You're welcome. And to those of you listening, thank you for joining us. This makes zero difference if you're not there listening and taking it out into the world. So I really, really appreciate it. If you like Speak Like a Leader.show, I sure would appreciate a 5-star rating and maybe telling a few of your friends about us. And I will look forward to being with you next time here on Speak Like a Leader.show. Thanks again, Liz. Great to have you. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.